What's up, Pod Pals? It's your buddy Adam, and you are listening to Podcasting Business School. It's a show where I teach podcasters how to love your podcast like a hobby and build it like a business. If you are a coach, consultant, or service provider, and you're looking to learn how to leverage a podcast to build your online business and get more clients, you're in the right spot. Now, today's episode is a special one, Pod Pals. It is a podcast audit, but I've never, ever done this before. I will not be doing the podcast audit. My friend, my pod pal, my protege, Raina Rokicki, she is one of my newest certified podcast growth coaches. She is stepping into the coach's seat, and she is going to be coaching a podcasting business school listener and doing a podcast audit with them. I'm really excited about my certified podcast growth coach program. We have graduated, I think, 14 certified podcast growth coaches. I just love saying it. And Raina is one of those folks. And one of the benefits of the program is getting to come on the show, show off what you can do as a growth coach. And so Raina is going to take the reins here. If you have any interest in my next certified podcast growth coach cohort, I'll put a link in the episode notes. And we're going to be running another one in 2025. So you can get on the first to know list on that link. That way you can be just like my pod pal, Raina Rokicki. So Raina is going to run the entire show. She recorded this without me watching or anything like that. And then at the end, stay tuned after the audit, and you'll get a little bit more information about Raina, who she is, and what she can do to help you out. So I hope you enjoy this. There's going to be more of these growth coach podcast audits popping in the Friday mix. And so here, without any further ado, let's bring on certified podcast growth coach, Raina Rokicki.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back. My name is Raina Rokicki. I am a podcast growth coach. And today I have Maya in the studio. She has a fabulous podcast called The Executive Coach. We're going to be diving into that today for an episode of Podcasting Business School. All right, Maya, welcome to the show. We want to just really dive into your show. So if I had a magic wand and I could wave it 6 months into the future, what would be your number one goal for your podcast?
Oh, that's hard. My number one goal, I think, would be, I know that this is probably the wrong answer, because I know it's about bringing business in, but in my mind, if it was like a consistent 1,000 people audience, because I have a stat on Spotify which tells me how many people are listening in the last 7 days. If it was consistently that would make me feel really good, because then I think I had 1,000 true fans, because I know even more people would subscribe. So in my mind, I think that would give me a certain level of confidence about the podcast.
Okay.
So I do kind of feel like that is probably still the goal, even though, yes, of course, I would like to make the business bit work better. So
yeah, no, that makes sense. I want to backtrack then just a little bit. So why do you want 1,000 true fans? Like, what do you want to do with this podcast? What's the why behind it? Like, why are you doing it?
That's a great question. So I love podcasting just for the sake of it. I think it's like my creative passion, and you feel like you can do your best creative work through this medium. That's how I feel. And the fact that it actually works very well with my coaching business, the two sort of complement each other, feels like just kind of like this weird, perfect coincidence. And so really, I want the two things to keep supporting each other, which they are already. Like the coaching gives me the content to be able to share on a regular basis. And then vice versa, the podcast does, help with clients, either referrals that then get warmed up, or increasingly now, the cold listener who has literally discovered me through, I don't even know where they've discovered me through. They'll say to me, I stumbled on your podcast, and then they'll want to buy my services, which is amazing. I'm seeing now that whole process work. So to me, I couldn't think of a better sort of setup than the coaching, and then that podcast and how they work together. So why do I do the podcast? I want to obviously share the messages of the podcast with as many people as it can benefit, and let people access free information when they need to, but then also have a pathway to then, if they want to work with me, do so.
Yeah, I mean, because I'm hearing two very good things. I definitely feel like your executive coaching business aligns perfectly with your podcast. And it's a perfect way, like you mentioned, to warm up clients, to bring you business. So that's definitely one path we could focus on today. The other path is just increasing the downloads and the listens, which is important. However, I would say, like, if your goal is more to grow your business with your podcast, we should focus on the money side. If you're like, I just really want this metric, I want to reach that 1,000 true fans, that 1,000 downloads, we can focus on that. So I guess I'm going to toss it back out to you. Which one, trusting your gut, your intuition, which one you were like, yeah, this is the one that's actually most important to me?
That's such a great question. I think I do need to go with the second one, because I think otherwise it's all just smoke and mirrors, it has to mean something to get to keep growing the audience. And so that process needs to be super clear. So I think I agree with you, which is that it's the second one is the more important question.
Okay. Yeah. So we're going to focus on like strategies to get you to that 1,000 true fans.
No. The other one.
Oh, sorry. The other one. Okay. That sounds good. So we will focus on the money, which is good, because personally, I almost think that's a better validation of your work, right? Because you are doing such a good job using that expert positioning that people are like, wow, I love Maya. I want to sign on with her. I like the way she teaches, the way she coaches. So, okay. So let's talk about that. Talk to me just real quickly about who is your ideal client? Like who, and be as specific as you can, who are you trying to reach with your podcast?
Yeah. So I've had the ideal client has now materialized, so I can give quite a good detail on them. They work for a blue chip company or a major company name that we've all heard of. It doesn't matter what, whether it's sort of transport or whether it's entertainment, it doesn't matter. It's just a well-known company, because I work across all sectors. And they have already had coaching, and they have business funding for coaching. And so they are coming to me as somebody that has listened a lot to the podcast, and they know my framework, which is 3 pillars. And they want to engage on one or more of those pillars. That's my ideal client.
Okay.
And I've had some glimpses of this, because I've had some of them now start to come through.
Yeah, fantastic. Would you say there's because I know on the form you filled out before, and you're kind of talked about parents as well and looking for a work-life balance. Would that still ring true, or that's just like sort of, it could fit, but it doesn't have to be a parent?
Yeah. So that's one of the pillars. So they're definitely, thriving in their corporate life or their careers, and they're doing it in a way where they want to have that balance. And so that's the third pillar. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. See, that's really good to know, because I'm looking at your cover art right now. And, your podcast is the Executive Coach, C-Suite, Career, and Life Tips for Leaders. We got a lot of really good words in there: Executive Coach, C-Suite, career tips, life tips, leaders. But I don't see anything about parents or that work-life balance. And that's like, if you're targeting parents, I would definitely put that in there, because, when I think about how people search for podcasts on Spotify, on Apple, they're going to be looking for, executive coaching for parents. And, because it's a very different group of people, right? Those on the career track without children can do things very differently versus those who have children, a family, they have that work-life balance. It means something different. So I would add that in your title extension, something about parents. Do you tend to work with both men and women, or?
I do.
Okay.
And
so
again, both of these two things that you've raised have a wrinkle to them, which is probably why I haven't already niched on them more. The parent one is that, yes, as much as I work with parents and the kind of demographic is 35 to 44 in the kind of most common part of my audience, I do have some fans that I know are not parents. I do work with executive coaching clients who are not parents. I'm not specifically, it's one of my pillars, but it doesn't have to be parenting. It could be other parts of their life that they want to balance, So that's my only thing that stopped me in the past. But I know that some of my most highly downloaded episodes are ones when I talk about like work-life wins, and that's often the parenting stuff. So I know that is something that matters to people. So I don't know if I should be leaning in more to that or not. Then the final bit of that is that sometimes the parents they've done the hard bit of parenting, and they're, further along in their careers because they're pushing C-suite, and actually their kids are a bit older. So they're less needing of that. So that's why I haven't done it in the past, but I'm very happy to take that and try it.
Yeah, I would put the word parents, in your title extension, just so you show up for that when people are searching for parent podcasts about leadership, executive coaching. It doesn't have to necessarily be mentioned on the show, but you want to be able to show up for that as a keyword when people are searching for it. And I would,
Absolutely.
yeah. So I would
Yeah.
definitely put it in your title. I would put it in your show description. You could mention that, you know, not all the episodes are geared towards parents, but you do cover certain topics. And maybe when you're planning out episodes, you could be like, you know, this month these 4 episodes are all about tips for parents, but then the other episodes aren't. And just kind of see, like you already kind of mentioned, those parent ones do well. And this would be a really good experiment. But right now, yeah, you're missing that chunk because you won't show up for that when people are searching.
Amazing. And then the second one, you said men or women. And this is tricky because obviously as a woman, I sometimes speak from my personal experience. And
Right.
so I am conscious that because there are some health focused ones and things like that, but I know I've got male listeners and I coach a lot of men in the rest of my business.
Yeah.
And to me, that's what makes me different. I'm not just another woman empowering other females. Like that's not what I'm about. I'm about empowering both men and women. And often the way to empower women is to empower the men. Like, to do the things. So
Yes.
for me, I'm just going to focus on the women. And so, but that makes my positioning a little bit tricky because I am speaking to both.
Yeah. Yeah. But I think that's good. I mean, I know you're saying there's a lot of women to women coaches. And so it might be good. You're like, I'm not that. I'm this other person. And that's something you could kind of talk about in your podcast.
Oh
so
yeah, I've not done that. Yeah.
You know, because that distinguishes you from other people. And that's all those little unique points are really good. Another thing too, I was just, looking at your podcast description, and you might want to think about, you know, the first paragraph's always a good paragraph to do kind of a summary of like, here's what the podcast is about. And this is, you know, these are the pain points I'm addressing. And then the second paragraph of your podcast description could be a paragraph where you started off and you say, this podcast will answer questions such as, and I would list, you know, like maybe 8 questions that, you know, clients ask, you know, your podcast answers. I mean, you might even do like a Google search, like what are the top questions that people ask about being a parent at a leadership level? Like really digging into those keywords, because those will show up again in your podcast description, and that'll help you show up for those keywords. So that's something else to consider.
Yeah. You see, and I just want to, I think this is really cool, but I do think my positioning is that I am a parent and I speak to parents, but it's not what I'm all about.
Yeah.
Like I'm about that being like one thing. You know, there are maternity coaches out there. There are people that speak specifically to that. I'm like folding it into the whole system, you know?
Yeah.
It's not necessarily my main message. My main message is how can we get super clear on your vision, your 10-year vision? How can we understand the unwritten rules of career and success and the things that can help you accelerate your career? How can we do that in a way that optimizes time, energy, and you know, through great planning and things like that. So that's my thing. So yes, of course it speaks to parents, but there's also
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. It's almost like, I mean, it sounds like you have to, well, a couple things. You have to almost experiment. It sounds like you kind of already know a little bit, like the top episodes are parent-led. That doesn't mean your podcast has to all be parent stuff, but also, have you done a lot of like reaching out to listeners? Like, I don't know if they've, you know, when they follow you on LinkedIn, or, you know, it'd be a good idea just to pick their brain, being like, hey, what do you like about the podcast? What are your biggest struggles? You know, and then hearing those things, that'll kind of help you maybe determine this is the direction I need to go with my podcast. Because the more you get in touch with those listeners and you really know what they want, that'll help. If you go too broad, then it's hard. You know what I mean? Because you're doing so many things. So
I think the thing that I use is that my ideal listener is basically like my existing coaching clients. And so they are my constant source of like, these are the challenges people face. And so I am tapped in almost every week to like my ideal listener, you know, challenges through my coaching work.
Yeah.
So that's how I use it. I mean, but I could still ask the pure listeners, the people who aren't clients, I could still ask them this. The other one challenge I face is I can't do what Adam talks about a lot, which is do live coaching sessions, because my coaching is very confidential, highly confidential. And I've managed to get one other person who I've coached who has her own podcast. So it was like, okay, this is going to be, she's used to sharing openly.
Yes.
But normally I can't do that, which is a real shame.
Yeah, no, that makes sense with your business. So like it's not always set up to do that coaching on the air. Yeah, I think just kind of circling back, anytime you're working with your clients, even just ask them, like, if you were searching for a podcast about this, what would you look for? What keywords would you search for? And just because then you kind of get an idea of like, what are those words that are on the tip of the tongue of just the everyday people? Because it might be different than what we think, right? And we only know that by talking to people. So those are some ideas just to help boost that growth. Another thing that really helps podcasters grow their podcast is guesting on other people's podcasts. Have you done a lot of that, or talk to me about that?
I haven't proactively done it. I'm a massive podcast listener, so I do have a couple that I would love to guest on that I'm sort of working up the courage. Like one of them, she's on mine, but she's a big author and stuff like that. But I haven't done it on a regular basis. If somebody asks me, I'll go. But that's it. I haven't systemized that. I haven't really, to me, that's like the next stage. But first I thought, I actually don't even feel I've got my keywords right. I always listen to Adam talking about keywords and I really struggle with that. So yeah, that's where I am on guesting. And I kind of feel like, you know, sometimes he'll help people just identify either the title and whether that's okay, and then those keywords. And there's always this bit of me that's like, yeah, have I really got that right? So that's probably what holds me back from moving to the next stage.
Okay.
I know I've not really answered your question, but I've almost wanted to circle back. I've almost wanted to circle back on keywords there to see if you've got any other thoughts on that, and even the title, you know, like
I like executive coach when it's hosted on the podcast player app. Make sure the word "the" is taken off, though. It's fine on your cover art, but your first word is the most important word for searchability. So I would make sure executive coach is the actual name of your podcast. Of course, when you're talking about it, you can say the executive coach, but you don't want the to be the first word. Wow. I like C-suite, career and life tips. I feel like we need something about parents in there, and I feel like you should just experiment with it. And again,
the actual title that is in Spotify has a slightly different one, which I can just share with you if that's of any help.
That'd be great.
It's I have to look it up myself because it's nothing catchy. Where is it? C-suite career success planning goals.
Work-life balance. I see.
Yeah, because I was asked to put the words work-life balance for leaders in because apparently that would be good. My producer did that.
Okay, let's think about because what would you say are the 3 biggest pain points you target, like you help your clients with?
Yeah, I would say a lack of a clear vision, 10-year vision.
Okay.
That they don't have a complete sense of where they're going next. They've done very well till now, following all the steps, but now they know that they need, for the next level, they need a clearer personal vision. Number 2 is the behaviors that actually get you to the C-suite, right? The kind of the relationships, the ways of presenting yourself, the ways of positioning yourself, building that support for yourself. That's the middle one. That's stakeholder management. That's a big one. That's kind of the main reason people come to me. And then the final bit is all that balance and managing stress and burnout and workload and things like that.
Okay. Yeah, because I'm kind of thinking, I'm like, what would those ideal clients be searching for? Because you help them with like future planning, leveling up behaviors, the stress and burnout. So I like work-life balance.
Career direction as well, career clarity.
I like that, career clarity.
There is a lot that I include around planning and like life planning, life design.
I like that, life design.
But would you search for that is the question.
I know, exactly. I was like, I don't think you would search for that. That's because it's like, what would people search for? That's the big question. That's the one like we really need to dig into your listeners and be like, what are you searching for? What are these, how did you come across me, first of all? And then what are you searching for? And that I almost feel like every time you work with a client from now on, be like, all right, if you were going to search for me, what are the words you would use? Because those are the ones we need, because there's so many out there, and it's a little bit of experimenting where you change that title extension, and I would do it for 90 days because it takes a while to see. And then after 90 days, try some other keywords, be like, all right, this worked really good. And during that 90 days, talk to listeners when they find you on LinkedIn, they find you, wherever else you might be like, how did you find me? Because I think that's going to be kind of the ticket for you. There's no like one quick answer right now.
No, there isn't. And that's the thing. I think all I can do is keep including good terms. So I think including career clarity, including parenting or parents is going to be a step in the direction. Removing the, oh my God, that's like, that's a big one.
Yeah, exactly. Avoiding burnout or, better stress management, maybe something like that.
Amazing.
Mm-hmm. I was going to say, for your podcast, do you have like an email list at all? Are you working on that?
I mean, not specifically for the podcast, but I have an email list. I've done a few lead magnets in the summer that kind of people got, listeners downloaded. So that was good. That added to those lists. But now it's a job that I need to do with my team, which is to actually clean that list or work out what we're doing with it. So yeah.
Because I feel like that's almost the next step in making money for your business. Like, you've already started the email list, which is good. Now you really have to make it a habit of nurturing it once a week, just with some valuable tip, and just, you could just take an episode that you already released that week. And, maybe you've got 3 tips in that episode, take one, dive a little deeper into it, and then say, hey, if you want to learn more about this, here's this week's episode. But, that nurturing, that educating of the audience is really big. So you do that every week. You become, again, like even a more ingrained habit of their life, build that relationship. And then when you do have, a neat lead magnet, then maybe, once every 2 months, you're like, hey, I've got this great lead magnet. It's going to solve this problem. Then people are like, yeah, I really like what Maya's talking about. Like, I definitely want to try this free challenge or whatever it is. And this is a great way to kind of warm them up and get them to really know you, like you. And then after that, they're going to be much more likely to hire you on as a coach. But that nurturing is really important. The podcast is like step 1. The nurturing email, I would say, is step 2. And then the lead magnets, those are, ways to just even build that relationship more and add value. But it leads to people really wanting to work with you. So you said you did like 3 different lead magnets. Talk to me about that. Was there one that stood out as more successful or helpful, or did they all kind of perform equally?
I did 2 actually. I'm just trying to think when I did the third one. And to be honest, the third one, I just randomly created a quiz that I didn't really lead the month to, and so that one didn't do very well. But I did a career blind spots checklist, and that got downloaded quite a bit. And then I did another one for August, which was more of a rejuvenation checklist, which is more for fun. But the career blind spots, literally, it's the perfect, and that is language of listeners. That is, I want to have this call to check my career blind spots. So that is very much playing that back. And that's actually going to be a very useful tool for me when I'm working with people now, like on a sales call and things like that. So that one was good. Yeah.
Yeah, I like that. So, okay, I think you should keep using the career blind spot one. Do you have a call to action on your podcast? Like something you tell your listeners to do?
Yeah, and I try and change it, and I try and take Adam's advice of like nothing too much. So sometimes it will be just reach out to me on LinkedIn, let me know, how it's going. My issue is that most of my reach that I get in terms of, so the career blind spots was amazing because every person that downloaded it was completely unknown to me. They were just like, wow, you were just like completely random. Whereas
Yeah.
the people that bother to kind of reach out to me, maybe because I've made it LinkedIn, so it's a little bit more informal, that's
Yeah.
normally people in my wider network rather than completely cold people. So I
Yeah.
don't know, other than having a downloadable, I don't know how to get in touch with
Okay.
these cold listeners, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. In order. Okay. So when they got the downloadable, I assume got their email address, right? Or,
Yeah.
okay.
And then
So,
they get an email back, and we don't have a huge sequence after that, but we just put a
yeah.
basic. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like that would be your next step then. Like I would develop some sort of email sequence. It doesn't have to be anything crazy. It could just be, like a check-in a week after they do the blind spot, being like, how's it going? What aha moments did you have? Da da da. And then maybe a month after, be like, hey, just checking in, has any of these helped you? Are you struggling? You could, and I don't know if you have like a discovery call, but or like, you know what I mean? Like, let's get together and just chat strategy quick, something like that. And then you could bring them into your weekly email series. But you definitely want to do follow up because this is a great lead magnet. People are finding what they need, they're finding that value, they're getting some insight into their work. That's super important. With your lead magnet too, I would just make that your one call to action for like 10 episodes. Like really promote that. Really get people to do it, to join your email list, to kind of build that relationship over email and vice versa. It'll start doing that. It'll start building up on your podcast. Also, one other idea that just came to me too, when you send those follow-up emails from the lead magnet,
Yep.
and each of the follow-up, like the one that's sent out a week after, be like, hey, what were your aha moments? Da 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 da. I bet you have podcast episodes that relate to those blind spots. Like, hey, if this blind spot is your issue, check out episode 154 on da 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 da. If this is yours, check out episode 77. I give some great tips on this. Like, get people to start binging your podcast because you already have tons of great info out there that they can be checking out. And that, again, just kind of like keeps building that relationship. What do you think about that?
Yeah. So, and that would be quite individual in the sense that we don't have a good system yet. It's quite simple lead magnet that once they've filled it out, they have to actively email me or I have to follow up and then they have to reply.
Yeah.
So that would be a manual process right now, which is fine because numbers are such that would be manageable. It'd be like, if somebody actually bothers to reply, that would be good and I can personalize it. So I'm
Yeah.
happy to do that right now. That's a manual process, but that's fine.
Okay. Yeah. Because I feel like, or go ahead.
No, that definitely makes sense. That was a good lead magnet. It's a good sort of pillar of the business in terms of that checklist. So yeah.
Yeah, because I feel like we've got some good things going on. So just to recap, I want you to really talk to your clients, figure out what are those words they would search for, and try those out for 90 days. As your title extension, maybe you can pop a few on the cover art, put a few in the description. So that's step one. Step two, make your blind spot lead magnet your one call to action for 10 weeks, like 2 months, 2.5 months. Just ask people to check it out. And then develop that follow-up email sequence where you're saying, hey, if this was an issue, you can check out this episode, and then kind of bring them into your email list for your episode. And then this might take some time, but then the next thing too, start to just make a weekly email a habit where you're just nurturing that audience. And then every once in a while, you're going to throw out a little something like a little challenge, or maybe you're getting them pumped up because you're bringing out this hybrid course, things in the future. But
That's
I think
literally what I'm doing.
yeah. Okay. So I feel like that's going to kind of start working some magic. It's going to start making those super fans who are going to be ready to work with you because they already like you. They already listen to your podcast, but now you're giving them so many more touch points to get to know you.
Yeah, and that's my worry is that I just don't know if I can commit to a weekly email on top of weekly podcast, weekly everything.
Yeah.
I think I'm going to struggle, and so I was wondering whether I could just commit to monthly. In the past, I've done monthly,
Yeah.
and I feel I feel that that's more sustainable.
Yeah. Maybe, I mean, weekly would be better, but you got to start somewhere. And if it's like, I'm going to start it monthly and then I'm going to work my way to twice a month. And then I think that's good. Remember too, with the email, it doesn't have to be long. You're not reinventing the wheel. You're just talking about a point just going more in depth about one point in your podcast. So, because I know sometimes it does seem daunting. It's like, how can I add another thing to my plate? I'm already like full with everything. But yeah, start somewhere, start at a month, and then work your way to more than that. And maybe inspiration hits one week and you're like, oh, I just have this really good story I want to share with my client, my email list. And don't be afraid to just shoot one out randomly too if inspiration hits.
Yeah. Okay. That's helpful.
Okay.
Would you say that's more important than Instagram stories?
Yes, without a doubt. Yeah, I feel like the purpose of social media is to get people to keep listening who are already there. But it's not great, I found with my clients, at like converting people over. It's more just like, hey, I'm alive. Here I am. Here's what's going on. Yeah. But the email list seems to be the magic formula and really nurturing and getting them to become part of their lives. So, and also, with Instagram, it's like you post something and maybe that person's not on Instagram that day and they missed your story or whatever it is, but the email is there. They will get to it whenever they get to it. So
that's really true, because I just find it so quick and easy to just share the week's podcast episode with a bit of blurb before. And I feel like at least I've done something quick to promote the podcast, but actually it diverts me from doing my LinkedIn. It diverts me from doing my email. It's not that good. It's a bit deceptive, and I come back and forth with it, but I feel like it even gets in the way of me sending an email. If I was banned from Instagram, I think I'd be much more likely to do a weekly email. Much more likely.
Yes, totally. Yeah, if I was going to say, if you had to choose, I'd be like, stop Instagram, focus on the email. That's going to be much better.
Okay. Because I feel like it's important. If I'm going to commit to something, I also need to take something away.
Yeah, exactly. I like that. One, something in, something out.
Yeah, exactly.
Maximize our effort here.
That's so helpful. Thank you so much. I'm conscious of our time as well, that you've probably run over.
Before we go, just for anyone listening, give a shout out about who you are in your podcast so they can check it out.
Yep. So you can check out my podcast. It's called The Executive Coach. And I'm Maya. And so you can, I guess, Google that or connect with me on LinkedIn, Maya Goodka. And you will find that podcast on all the usual places, and it's on YouTube as well.
Okay, awesome. So guys, make sure to check out Maya's podcast, especially if you are in a leadership position, you're looking for that work-life balance. She's the one who can help you out. Ready to grow your business with a podcast? I bet you are. Hi, I'm Raina Rakicki, podcast growth coach and host of the Podcast Growth Club. I am also one of Adam's most beloved proteges, trained by the master himself to help you grow and monetize your podcast, even with a small audience. As an experienced podcast and YouTube producer, I'll analyze your strategy, help you increase discoverability, and grow your audience, turning those listeners into super fans who are excited to work with you. You'll learn how to effectively monetize your show and transform it into a powerful tool for business growth. Who doesn't want that? If this sounds good to you, check out my podcast, aptly named Podcast Growth Club, or find me on LinkedIn at Raina Rakicki. That's Raina, Rayna, Rakicki, Rokicki. Let's take your podcast to the next level.